Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Jo Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. Jo Yardley is possibly with us later in the hour. She's trying to connect with us, but with computer problems, I'm trying to catch her on a landline or a cell phone. Yeah, they still have those. Well, welcome back to the Drax Files podcast. We've been off the air for a long time during the summer. There was so much else going on. If you don't think that stuff was going on, then you haven't been paying attention. So today's show is going to be about Sansar. Sansar, the new virtual world or the world building platform made by Linden Lab, has officially entered the public beta phase on July 31st, 2017. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Before I introduce my guests, I just want to remind you that the Drax Files podcast, the Drax Files Radio Hour, is a community effort where I, Draxter, sit here and try to book guests that are important and have stuff to say about Second Life, about digital culture and whatnot. And I'll edit this together with some music and then I push it out. And if you like this stuff, you can support the show by sending us Linden dollars. From this week onward, we're also taking Sansar dollars, but I have to figure out how to get Sansar dollars on my account. Right now, you can support us by adding a voluntary subscription, or if you have a Second Life business, you can have a banner displayed on the website. So send us an email, send us a in-world message to the avatar Drax Files, and then we'll send you a subscription device. So that's that. And the other thing, the podcast, we're taping it during the week and we pre-tape it. Sometimes we will be doing live stuff. Sometimes we will actually change the world that we're taping it in. My plan is to hop from world to world to world. There are several different social VR platforms out there. And so my goal is to hop between, high fidelity VR chat space. Maybe there are others out there, Second Life, of course, and good old-fashioned Skype, which we're taping right now. And the podcast will go live on Sundays around 12 p.m. Second Life time. So that's the new time. It's Sunday, 12 p.m. We used to be on Friday. We used to be on Saturday, and now we're on Sunday because, it just works better. So take it or leave it, all right? I don't need you, listener. Actually, I do. Because otherwise I'll just be sitting here talking to a wall, which is depressing. All right, so today's show is about Sansar. Sansar is here, so now what? And I have two guests with me, Dulce Baerga, who was on the show before, maybe half a year ago, 3 months or so, and Kelvin D. So I want them to introduce themselves real quick. Dulce, who are you and what qualifies you to be on this show today?
So I am a Second Life resident almost 10 years now.
Okay, that's enough qualification. That's all we need.
I own 2 simulators, yeah.
Oh, even better. You can be on the show every week.
And I am the CEO of a virtual reality content studio, virtual reality, augmented reality content studio, and I'm focusing on mixed reality research and development.
And Kelvin?
I have been in SL just, I think, a little longer than Dulce. In Second Life, I'm Kelvin D. Kramer. In 1920s Berlin, I'm Will Thompson. And I'm an enthusiastic consumer of all of this VR stuff, even before they called it that.
So you also have, just like all of us, a sort of a multiple avatar disorder, I guess.
I have indeed, yes. And somewhat dissociative.
Okay, so we're talking about Sansar. Calvin, we've been doing this Atlas hopping thing where we hop from place to place. Let me just say Sansar at this point supports a desktop mode and a VR mode, so you do not need a head-mounted display. That's still kind of a weird rumor that's sort of going around. Calvin, if your first impression of Sansar when you were first going in, I'm assuming you were not part of the private alpha testing group, so you came in when they opened it up in
Correct.
July 31st.
Yes.
And so, what was the first thing you did?
The first thing I did was went into the first one that was suggested when the Atlas first popped up. And I believe that was a Zen garden thing, and it was on the first day of the open beta. That very evening, I went home from work, signed up, got the stuff installed, and rebooted, and then all the crap necessary. Jumped through all the hoops, got on, and there were 100 other avatars there, and stuff wouldn't load, and I couldn't move. If I started to move, everything jumped. And I got sick and had to take the HMD off. I didn't even know that there was a desktop mode. That took me a while to even figure that out. But I carefully plodded my way through and was wishing I could find a way to, someone is talking a lot and I can't tell who it is, but the voices are coming from spatially all over the place. And I was simultaneously impressed by the 3D spatialization of sound and annoyed by how much there was. And I wanted to shut people up. I didn't know how to do it. I couldn't figure out how to mute people. It was fascinating and terrifying and irritating all at once.
Dulce, this is amazing how you describe it. This is almost like, this is the best, it's what you described here. I heard that many times, and it's in a weird way, a deja vu, I guess, how people must have felt or still probably feel when they go into the Second Life welcome area, I guess, just a little bit crazier even.
Yeah, exactly.
Dulce, we talked briefly before we went on the air about the thing with getting sick and getting overwhelmed. Now, from your point of view, you can broaden this or bring in your own Sansar experience, but please, your take on this thing about being overwhelmed, because I think that this is such an amazing part of social VR, which we're going to talk about, but it's also the thing that potentially could totally hold it back or even completely backfire.
Yeah, definitely. Not being able to have control over the rendering in your eyes and knowing how to move in the space without getting sick is something that I was challenged with when I first got into Sansar. And having an avatar that was kind of like an apparition with the HMD was very disconcerting at first. And I came in on the alpha.
Mm-hmm.
What
do you mean by apparition? Sorry to jump in here.
Like I didn't have a body. I looked down, I didn't see a body at all. And I saw my shadow, but I didn't see a body. And that was and moving around, like walking in the space in the alpha was a little hard, but I was very taken by the look and feel of the whole world itself. I was just really amazed with how visually stunning it was. But those challenges of latency and vertigo are very real for me in the headset. So I prefer to experience it on the desktop mostly, and because I can't mute the volume of sound that comes out of the experience, I prefer to not even have sound on and chat with people, which is very interesting because people don't necessarily want to chat in Sansar the way that they like to chat in Second Life. So
that is super interesting. Calvin, real quick for this apparition thing, just to clarify, people who haven't tried Sansar, and of course I encourage everyone to go in and try it, but right now in this beta stage, we do not see our body. So if we have the HMD on, we look down, we don't see our body. There's other social VR platforms where you can already do that. In Sansar right now, you still have these kind of bluish hands that represent your controllers. Calvin, was that something that also rubbed you the wrong way, or you kind of looked at it like, what is this? Who am I?
Yeah, in fact, that's something that's different about high fidelity. You could always see yourself in high fidelity, and there are a handful of other games in the Oculus Home Store, whatever, where you can see yourself. You could at least see your arms in most games, but possibly your entire avatar. To the extent that it wasn't in your way in order to accomplish whatever the goal was in the game or the experience or what have you. And I did find it weird that I've just got these ghost hands and I can see other avatars' shadows, but I can't see my own. So I wonder if that's a change from when it was in closed beta or in alpha.
That is okay. So interesting that I didn't anticipate this, but now you guys are pushing me into the defender of Sansar as the superior social VR offering. Of course, I completely see these. I just want to say that we need to keep in mind that we are in beta, and you mentioned high fidelity, and in high fidelity, yes, you can look down, you can see your feet if you're walking, you can even see your legs. You can even attach the pucks on your feet. I thought about this back and forth so many times, and I came to the conclusion, especially when I visited Linden Lab a couple of weeks ago, is that it is a matter of prioritizing, and I do see it as a war. I mean, it's a race between these two premier platforms and maybe some others, but all these companies prioritize stuff differently, and it obviously Linden Lab prioritized the render engine. Stuff looks stunning, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And in high fidelity, it's maybe a little bit low poly and cartoonish, but let's talk about this. I mean, what do you guys think? Now, I'm jumping back and forth here, but what do you guys think strategy-wise? Which is the better strategy? How do you get people in? Do you get people in better with the high-fidelity approach of having avatar customization ready to go, or do you get people in with very kind of polished look, as in Sansar?
Well, high fidelity's avatar customization is not ready to go. It's a process to get a avatar that looks like you're an avatar that you want to customize.
Come on,
in
all
your
you
way.
need to do is to study Blender for 3 months or something else, and then go through 5, 6 different other softwares that are all publicly available, and boom, there you go. Wait a minute, you still need to put your own server in high fidelity, and that takes a week.
Or go spend $400 at Dube and get dubed and have them rig it for you and modify it for you and onboard you in it. It's an expensive process. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, boy, the Sansar, I'm appreciating the fact that tonality and sliders and those kind of things are starting to be added in, different skin tones and hair types and such for the avatar. I really appreciate that right now, and that's something that I'm looking forward to. And I agree, they have to prioritize. So get what needs to be done first, the beautiful rendering engine that can work on most systems, and then build in all the other custom features, that Second Life has that people are used to.
Calvin, if you were the CEO of Linden Lab, wouldn't you, or what would you do? I mean, wouldn't you? I think, like, if I were the CEO, I would make avatar customization the absolute number one priority. But I also I don't understand enough of the complexity that it actually is entailed here. So, yeah, but I think that is what is the defining sticky factor, I guess. No.
Here's the big difference. Okay, the rendering engine for Sansar is amazing, and
it is.
I really think that they spent a lot of time trying to perfect that kind of on-the-fly rendering, and they put a lot of focus into that. Nobody else has done that. High Fidelity hasn't done that. No other metaverse has done that, and I know because Linden Labs has Second Life that's already got a thriving marketplace, it's got a thriving resident community, it would be very easy for them to install that into Sansar kind of turnkey at a point. So getting people in beta testing and trying it out and giving feedback right now, that's all awesome. I think they're right on track, and I don't want to knock them at all. I'm not trying to knock them at all. I think they have a lot of problems that they have to solve, and they will solve those problems, and I'm really excited and looking forward to all of that. And I honestly think if they really play the cards right, they will be the big winners in the overall view of the immersive social environment.
No, I wanted to, before you go into that, I wanted Kelvin again, imagine yourself as the CEO, because I do find it, I don't know, I'm sitting here like, Monday, I'm sitting here watching sort of I'm watching a baseball game here, and I'm rooting for one team, and I go like, you guys got to put the avatars in there, come on. We need those customization things, because otherwise people will lose interest. And I'm going to address you, Kelvin. You're the CEO. Why don't you do this right now?
I would probably still want what I want. However, I would also be privy to more information about what is our market and how big is it, and what do we think is the future of it. And I might have prioritized it exactly the same way they are. And I think the light just went on for me a moment ago as Dulcie was talking. The beauty of the rendering engine and the fact that sometimes you go in and there's a bunch of people there, and the feeling of presence when we were talking about at the last time I was with you with the Atlas hopping thing, you were talking about the synchronization of the mouth movements, and you could almost read someone's lips. That Philip Rosedale would talk about that as a feeling of presence. That's really, really important, but none of that exists if you go to some place where there's nobody, which is what happens to me in 1920s Berlin more often than not. I'm in the middle of the U.S., and so when I show up in there, there's usually nobody else around, but it's a beautiful place, and I still like walking around town and just kicking around, being in a place that's gorgeous. And if you made the same thing in Sansar, it would be even more gorgeous because it's got an even cooler rendering engine.
And it would be even more empty because you need a high-powered PC still.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. But there have been some experiences that I've been in Sansar all by myself, which usually I would prefer because I don't really like people, that have brought tears to my eyes, that have given me goosebumps, that have made me exclaim, yes, this is how we're going to teach our youth about these historical places, these wonderful things that scientists did in the 1960s. This is how you're going to capture their attention and their interest. It has blown me away. And the fact that I can't see my own avatar and I don't look like me in real life doesn't matter at that point. So I do think they're really onto something.
This is so interesting. Again, it shows, I guess, how difficult it is to set the course for Linden Lab or any other company, High Fidelity included, because the preferences of users are so different. And Kelvin, you remind me of my dad, who I have these, when I show him Second Life, and he's very enthused by the possibilities, but he always says, what's the deal with the avatar? I don't need an avatar. The stuff is really cool, but why do I need to even go through customizing it? So he sees it as this vehicle that is, because he would also be enamored by the content and the scientific stuff, and he really is not in there to kind of chit chat. So
and the Sansar avatar is already very, very customizable. You can be just about any sort of 24-year-old person with brown eyes that you want.
Any sort of 24-year-old person with brown eyes.
Yeah, you have a nice blue blazer also. So I cut you off earlier, Dulce, please. You were saying about High Fidelity. You were going...
Yeah, so High Fidelity, their avenue is to try to play on the whole customizing aspect and being able to make your own environment for yourself in your own sandbox. And there's a lot of people in there, and they have a great physics engine. happening in High Fidelity. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate how social it is when there are gatherings. And I also got myself duped, and that was really exciting. And I believe that
Gotta
High
jump in
Fidelity.
here. Dupe3D.com. They, if you have the necessary cash, you can, or if you live in one of those hip cities that they offer, you can go into a booth and they have, I don't know, 50, 60, or 100 cameras, and they make they make you a little they scan you, and then they can give you the digital file, or they can make a little figurine that you can put on your mantle.
Why can't they just do that when they scan you going through the TSA?
Yeah, exactly.
That might be a source of revenue for the TSA. That's a good idea.
Exactly.
That's amazing, yeah.
But Dolce, sorry, I got to push back here too, because I don't see anybody in High Fidelity. I'm sorry, because I go in there also at different times of the day, and you're right, there's gatherings and
gatherings.
Right, but other than that, it's not growing.
It's the only time I go in is with the gatherings. Well, I hope to support High Fidelity at River Studios, because they're literally across the street from me, and have symbiotic relationship with them, in the sense that onboarding people into their platform and pushing the boundaries of what their platform can do in a mixed reality sense is the kind of things that I want to focus on. And since they are across the street and they are my friends, it's just the natural thing for them to work with me. But I also am keeping my relationship with Linden Labs very open, and I promote Linden Labs, and I believe that they really have a great thing going, and I want to see both platforms succeed for very different reasons, and I think that they both will succeed for very different reasons. And High Fidelity gives the developer and the artist the ability to be truly 100% in control of the entire experience. Now, you have to know what you're doing in order to do that, so it's not for a novice person or somebody who's just trying to figure out what metaverses are about. So that's why I see Sansar is going to have its place. It's going to be that turnkey kind of experience for somebody who doesn't know how to build these things, who wants to have this experience, who wants to go into these worlds, but they want to do it relatively easy, super fast, and just start experiencing.
Yeah, Sansar is friendly for just being a consumer, and High Fidelity is far from that.
Yeah,
I would slightly disagree, because again, I've been also critical about where Sansar is right now, where you need the barrier of entry for building is a little higher, because you need to learn a third-party software in order to deliver the content into Sansar. So I hope that will change. And I've been told, you can build basically a prim sandbox where people build stuff, and that could be the experience that you offer into the Atlas of Sansar. But I would slightly disagree with you, Kelvin, because I have seen in the Atlas hopping people who would not call themselves creators. They've been very, very creative, and they went to Google Blocks, played around, and they imported content. So they're not just furniture, quote unquote, furniture rearrangers, which would be frankly depressing if that's what the metaverse is going to be about. Sansar is just, in my mind, there are a lot less obstacles, because it's just, frankly, much more stable. I want to ask you two things, and then we're going to have a music break, and then Jo Yardley is going to hopefully join us. She is calling in, and the connection seems to be okay. Earlier, you mentioned about interaction, that you prefer text, Dolce, because you put the sound down, and that is a challenge for all these platforms. And it's not a secret that Silicon Valley or the platform makers are trying to push voice as the premier means of communication now, vis-a-vis in Second Life, where that was actually coming a little bit later. I think there's a lot of problems with that, because the power that anonymity can have with text communication is great. I think it's important. And when we make it socially not acceptable that you're texter, there's something weird about it, and why are you not using voice? That excludes a lot of people, not only people who maybe cannot talk, or people who don't want to talk. So it's confining that way. I find it problematic that this is so pushed right now as the premier means of communication. So that's number one. And your comment on it. Number two, please comment on, is the visual fidelity really that important? I'm working with people in Second Life from the disabled community. For them, if Second Life is the way to socially interact, some of them work with machines that are so old that they maybe have 10 frames a second, right? They dial the whole settings down. They don't care. It's still a completely enjoyable experience. And they still talk about having memories of being in a place. So those are the two questions. Each of you go.
The visual aspect of it, I agree. It doesn't have to be visually stunning for you to have a memory of an experience as if it was an actual memory and enjoy it. I actually had very fond memories in very low polygon places on the internet. And so, yeah, I would agree that there's a lot of push on the visual side of things that, but I like a visually stunning experience because I have eyes and I can see, and I can afford to go and get a high-powered computer that will push the boundaries of the graphics card. So I'm torn there, and really it comes down to how compelling is the experience on a whole, and how easy is it to use, and how quickly can I start socializing with people, or can I start doing whatever the purpose of me being in that place is for. And then as far as the chat, I agree also. Chat should not go away. Chat should actually still be supported and pushed as a means to communicate. I don't feel people should be forced into speaking all the time. And I agree that this whole invasive listening and microphoning communication is a little daunting and creepy, and it's a whole nother subject on ethics and the future and whatnot, because that's just going to get more and more pervasive as we move forward.
Yeah, we really need to have that discussion. And it seems like the user here again, or us, the residents, or now we're users. We used to be residents. We used to have more rights. Now we're just users. We may want to help educate the Silicon Valley masters of the universe that, we may want a little bit broader array of communication tools. Kelvin, what do you think? I mean, you don't care. You don't like people, as you said earlier. I hear you loud and clear. I'm like that on Monday. It's like Monday, let's try it with humanity, and Tuesday go like, nah, it's not worth it.
I'll see you next week. I much as I in the VR social world, I don't want to give Facebook any credit, because every time I've tried their thing, I've hated it. Partly because I have no friends on Facebook and nobody else is there. But I wonder if someday there will be in Sansar, in high fidelity, in these social VR things where everybody's got a voice, if there will be something like the privacy settings of Facebook. Like, I would like my voice to only be heard by my contacts. Or my friends of friends. I would like to only be able to hear people that are with a slider 5 meters from me, 10 meters from me, or only my contacts.
That is an amazing idea. Dolce, I hope you write that stuff down.
Yeah,
Damn.
It's all great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
There's not very many options in Sansar yet, and that's completely understandable. I do think that I agree with both of you about the fidelity of the rendering engine. We need to keep on pushing forward, because the most recent Star Wars movie that came out looks nothing like the first Star Wars movie that came out, and that's just the world that we're in. And you go back in time, one of the very early theater movies had a train in black and white and fuzzy and 14 frames per second, I think, coming right at the camera, and people screamed and jumped out of the way. And that wouldn't happen now. So, yes, you can have a memory of being in a place from reading a book, or at 10 frames per second in a very low poly environment. But you can also get the hairs on the back of your neck stand up because you visited a tomb in Egypt with an incredible rendering engine and amazing detail.
Yeah.
All of this is perfectly acceptable.
Really good point. And I also, I mean, some people make the argument, I'm not going to go there. I'm just going off a tangent. I want to go to a brief musical break because Jo is going to join us also. And I know that Jo was not able to go into Sansar because another obstacle, and this is always the catch-22 with new technologies, it does require an upfront investment in a relatively new machine. So we're going to talk to Jo about that and what she thinks. Right now, I want to bring in some music by Torley Linden, and people know who Torley is, I hope. And Torley is now the sound designer among all his other duties at Linden Lab. He's the sound designer for Sansar, and in the closed alpha channel, people were joking about, there's so much Torley music in there. Like, do they deliberately make the experience so long to load so that we listen to the music? I love that music. It's very hard to create music for a virtual world that kind of, touches on all the different aspects because it's not one thing. It's obviously not a horror game. It's not a sci-fi game. It's not a historical experience. It's all of the above. And so Torley was tasked with this interstitial music. I think he did a fabulous job. So I just captured a little bit of it, and let's listen to that, and then bring in Jo. This is the Drax Files Radio Hour. right, so this was a little bit of Sansar music when you log into Sansar, when you start up the software, and then when you are choosing experiences from the atlas. By the way, if you haven't been in Sansar, there's an atlas. There are these experiences on a long list. Right now, there is no search function that's on the roadmap, and it's been, of course, criticized by the public beta users. How do I sift through these experiences? It's crazy. There's 500 experiences, and I don't know where to go. And so that's coming next. And the music is then also played when you customize your avatar and when you add attachments and when you teleport from one experience to the other. So again, Torley, if you're listening to this show, I'm absolutely, I'm really floored by what you did. I really love this music. So let's bring in Jo Yardley, who is calling us from an undisclosed location.
Amsterdam calling.
Jo, we haven't spoken all summer. How did you survive the summer?
Oh, it was bliss. Peaceful, quiet.
Yeah.
But I've no idea how I survived the summer. But I'm here sometime.
People have really asked me where you are, and your issue is that you have one machine where you can go into Second Life, but it has no microphone, and then you have another computer which doesn't run Second Life, but it has a microphone. Is that true?
Exactly. I've got a 12-year-old MacBook that used to do Skype, but today I found out that Skype is blocking that old version of the IS.
Of course.
Yeah. So at the very last minute, I thought might as well try it on the 10-year-old broken Alienware laptop, and somehow my Mac headset works with the Alienware laptop, and even though all the software is out of date and there are several warning signals going off, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, there's a sellotape. I think I sellotaped something to the wrong bit, and now it's working.
You are with us right now. You're with us with this very old-fashioned technology of this flat virtual world.
You'll see Enigma machine, yeah.
Okay, so my so the first question that I want to ask you, I already know the answer. So what do you think about Sansar?
Well, after begging and threatening and bribing Lindens for half a year, they finally let me in, and then my computer said no. And well, I've been waiting for the moment I get a new computer since all that time.
But Jo, this is exactly because this is a serious issue now. I mean, let's look at this in a serious way. Here is a platform that has a lot of potential, but the barrier of entry, I mean, it puts you back a considerable amount of dollars, and not everybody can go out and buy a new machine.
Well, does it really though? I mean, my MacBook, my Alienware laptop, they both need replacing anyway. I'm a gamer. I like gaming. I want to play up-to-date computer games. I can't play those either. Anyone who is into gaming and anything more than just using their computer for internet and sending letters and things like that, they'll get a new computer. How old does your computer have to be to not work? How broken does it have to be?
Jo, I mean, you just said you like gaming. I like to fly to Japan, but I can't do it because I don't have the money. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that's not the airplane's fault.
I'm not suggesting that Linden Lab or any other company halt development. But I'm trying to.
Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Thing I said. If you buy a reasonable computer today, how expensive does it have to be to run Sansar without the headset?
About $1,000.
That's a regular laptop, right? That is not a gaming beast or anything like that.
You could probably find a gaming beast for about $1,200 at the low end. Yeah.
And for a desktop computer, the prices go down even more.
That's true.
So maybe it's just us sap gits who have computers that should have been handed in years ago.
No. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, you can probably get a desktop machine for maybe 800 or so that runs it, and maybe it's time to upgrade your machine on a PC. You pop in a new graphics card. I agree with you, and I'm not suggesting that Linden Lab or any other company just halt the development just because people cannot afford the hardware. However, I've seen this so many times on all the different forums where people say, What is Linden Lab doing? There's not even a Mac version. Thank you, Linden Lab.
That is a problem, yeah.
But that's the same argument. What should they do if the Mac cannot do the specs that are needed for the current generation of HMDs? Because that is the reason why it doesn't work. You need those 90 frames per second minimum in order not to throw up on your Mac for the head-mounted display to work. So.
Well, then Ebba has to go on a romantic date with the CEO of Apple. No.
Well, it seems Apple is very concerned with augmented reality. Maybe Sansar should make a version for the iPhone that's an AR version.
Kelvin, what do you say about this dilemma with... let me just ask you, is this a big factor of holding back adoption of social virtual worlds in your mind? The machines?
Yes and no. It kind of depends on your perspective. Like I mentioned before, I don't really like other people. So the fact that a lot of people are not going to be there.
Does Jo bother you? I mean, I can just cut her off right now.
Jo bothers me perfectly.
Perfectly.
It's fine, Jo.
The fact that some people are not going to come along is not a problem for me. And our society has gotten used to the perennial disappointment of my stuff doesn't work anymore. They don't build it like they used to. The planned obsolescence. This is just all part of the same wave. And we take it or leave it.
It's been going on since the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Are you still using sticks? We're on stones now.
Yes.
Come on, get with the time, Daddy-o.
Well, it's certainly been accelerated in the digital realm with in the computer age. I mean, that's pretty clear. And again,
It's going a lot faster. But the only real problem that we have as a world at this moment is that I don't have a up-to-date computer. That's the real issue. I mean, everyone else. Who cares?
Well, I'm very glad that Jo is back with her list of priorities, and you're absolutely right. I mean, who cares about anything else other than
Wolf War 3? I don't care on your new computer.
Oh, would you please start a GoFundMe to get a computer? Because I want to contribute. I really do.
Yeah.
I want to build her with your vision in Sansar.
Yep. That is actually...
That's the whole reason I keep paying rent in 1920s Berlin. I'm hoping someday I'm going to be able to get the same address grandfathered in when it gets rebuilt in a more beautiful rendering engine.
That's right. I mean, hey, come on, Jo. Okay, when this podcast goes live on Sunday, start a GoFundMe campaign. I'll throw you some Sansar dollars so you can get that machine. Now, I want you guys' take on the field of competition, because also while we were off the air this entire summer, Allspace VR, who is a place that I have ridiculed on the record many times because I found it ridiculous with their static avatars, and I felt Allspace VR was just sort of a place to kind of passively consumes shows or events that are put on by quote unquote celebrities and stuff like that. And so that's stuff that doesn't interest me. I mean, I'm more into exploring user created content, which I find fascinating. So Allspace VR, they folded, and now they're maybe coming back, but they ran out of money. And so that was, of course, in the tech press, like, oh, this is the end of social VR, because Allspace, with their prominent, and they got a lot of funding, was sort of synonymous with social VR, which bugged me as another thing that really bugged me. So then, kind of like almost a couple of days before Sansar came out of the private alpha testing, Allspace folded. So, what people were like, what does this all mean? But let me make the round, start with Dolce. What does it mean? Is that segment, if you want to call it that segment within the VR world, is that segment of social VR in danger? Is there even a market for it? What does the demise of AltSpace mean? What does it mean that the official Sansar videos don't have nearly as many views as any type of griefing video or any other VR video? I mean, what does it all mean? Do people just not want to be social like Kelvin?
Well, before I get into what it all means, I have to go full disclosure here. Rothenberg Ventures, one of my clients and also the main investor in River Studios, is also an investor in AltSpace. And yes, and AltSpace is a part of Rothenberg's portfolio. So when AltSpace folded, it was a hit to the portfolio. Now, that aside, my own personal opinion towards AltSpace isn't all that great. I didn't appreciate them being labeled the first in a series of things that they got labeled the first.
I think every Second Lifer gets really personally offended with this whole, like, we did it first.
I've been there 17 times a week on Twitter, getting into fights and arguments on Facebook, everywhere.
Yeah. So, but I was very sad that it did fold for a moment. It changed executives. The executives left, but it did get saved, and it got saved by a private investor who I believe is Palmer Luckey. That's just a rumor. I don't know for sure. It's my gut feeling because he put out a poll on Twitter asking if he should save it, and it was overwhelmingly on the yes side to save AltSpace. So they still exist. They're still there. They're just trying to pivot and revamp what their purpose is. And you're right. It's a passive experience. It's not as interactive or customizable as all the other.
Sorry, I got to jump in here. Why does it get so much attention versus even High Fidelity gets a fair amount of attention, and Philip Rosa is very charismatic, but even compared to AltSpace, High Fidelity and Sansar, they're not even, yes, they get some press, but it's not comparable. Why is AltSpace all over the place?
Because AltSpace, the core group of people that started the HMD push, which would have been my River ecosystem at 1062 Folsom, when it was just River and Rothenberg, and you also had the Upload crew, and with both of those companies and funding groups pushing this platform on the HMD market, that's the reason why I got most of the press. And that's the reason why. And it was a young group of people, very young, who probably never really hung out in Second Life ever, and came straight from Xbox consoles into a VR headset. They probably all played PlayStation Home, which was very similar to AltSpace. So, yeah.
I have a compatible theory about that.
Yeah, Kelvin, go ahead.
With High Fidelity, every time you started it, you probably had to do an update or whatever.
Yes.
Well, High Fidelity is still in beta, so let's give it.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that's a good thing. I'm coming from it from the software development point of view, and I think a lot of people who are gamers and a lot of people who are high end into the computer stuff are also pretty likely to be in software development, or have friends who are, or work at a place that does software development, even if they happen to be in sales. So when you see the product changing frequently, it triggers that little, they're doing continuous development and deployment. They've learned how to do this agile thing, okay? And when you're in Oculus Home, and AltSpace VR is one of the things that you have, even if you don't go there, every time you fire up Oculus Home, you see there's 6 messages in there that says AltSpace VR has finished downloading. They have been moving that ball down the field multiple times a day. I was just in Oculus Home yesterday, and now I'm in today, and it tells me twice that AltSpace VR has finished downloading. It looks like things are moving really fast, and I think, whether that was intentional or not, all of the people who are in this stuff have got Oculus Home or Steam or something, and they're seeing this constant reminder that AltSpace VR is there. AltSpace VR is there. So it brings it to mind very frequently. And I think that helped with the whole press push.
That's a really good fear, because I really do believe the more we're finding out how addicted we are to, social media, because of the refreshing gives us that little jolt. I mean, that's also the jolt that we're getting. We don't get that jolt from Second Life because nothing happens. And I'm being facetious here.
Relatively.
Also the VR community in San Francisco was very, very high on AltSpace. Extremely so in LA and in San Francisco. So the VR LA guys pushed AltSpace. They had their Reggie Watts meetups in there. I know Cosmo Sharf did a couple of keynotes inside AltSpace. The Upload guys were heavily in AltSpace. They were constantly doing things in there. So the community itself was kind of gravitating around that platform.
And then meanwhile, Sansar has the coolest kind. Sansar has I'm jumping in here. This is my show, so everybody shut up, because Sansar's been out only since July 31st. They have over 500 experiences already, and people are making stuff. And again, it's so unfair. Life is unfair. They're just out to get Linden Lab, I guess.
Life is unfair.
Also, I got to remind people that every Saturday at 11 a.m. we're doing Atlas hopping. Well, Calvin was with us a few times, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm trying to prove, me and Strawberry Singh, we're trying to prove that social VR has a future if we can make it social. If we gather together in a place and then we hop in different places and then we have discussions and we look at things and we're gathering in there together.
And we're waiting for things to load.
Well, Joe, yes. But
can you imagine how long it will take to load something like 1920s Berlin?
It will get faster, and I have seen it. I have seen the improvement almost on a daily basis. The Linden Lab engineers, they're not sitting around doing nothing. They're trying to increase and the efficiency of downloading those experiences. The complexity is huge. The spatial audio stuff alone.
I'm absolutely sure, but it was a bit frightening when I first witnessed, a loading screen that lasted for minutes.
That's right, Joe. Actually,
I'm old. I remember having to load a cassette tape to play a computer game. That's how
you don't have that much time left, sister.
Exactly. I'm close to death.
Oh my gosh.
But even I have this patience to wait for something to load that takes a few minutes. But what about the young people, the horrible, impatient young people who want everything now?
Joe, this is an incredible important point, and I completely forgot that you actually witnessed our Atlas hopping stream on YouTube. I think you were there, so you have formed an opinion, and good. Thank you for bringing this up, because the time to download some of these complex, beautiful experiences, including, of course, 114 Harvest, which I'm told is the highest rated Sansar experience across the board. Thank you very much. Which
doesn't surprise me at all.
It's created by Ria. After my initial idea, Ria went above and beyond what my initial idea was. But Joe, is this going to hold? Is it maybe premature that Linden Lab released this in beta with these long download times? You think that's going to backfire or what?
I don't know. I'm not sure if they could have waited much longer, because the VR world is moving along and they really need input, and they really need to know what Sansar does when there are 40 people standing on top of each other's heads. So it's I think the main reason they went public has a lot to do with the timing behind the scenes, and I'm sure they talked about it a lot. And it's far from finished, but I'm not sure they could have waited much longer. And eventually you have to jump. So I have no idea. I
agree with Joe, and I think there's two things that it is still beta, but I think there's two things that Sansar needs to do. One, when everybody shows up at a place and they pile up in a pyramid, it should automatically animate them into a cheerleading squad.
Oh, that's good. Or even better, motorbike police officers. Oh, that's cool.
But my second point is a serious one. They need to concentrate on tweaking how caching works. Because I did a couple of experiments. I went into 114 Harvest, the only place really worth going these days.
Well, thank you. I'll transfer your Sansar dollars for this little plug.
Thank you very much. I shut off Sansar, fired it back up, and went back into 114 Harvest. Now I've got a very fast connection. It still took 15 seconds for it to kick in. But if I go into 114 Harvest, then I go visit some other thing from the Atlas and then jump back to 114 Harvest, it takes about 5 seconds. So they do have cache, but they're throwing it away when you shut it off. And nothing has changed in 114 Harvest between yesterday and today. The soccer ball is still 6 houses down the street. You know? So why is that cache not being managed locally better?
Linden Lab, are you listening? Come on. Okay, we're at the end of the show. Final round of thoughts on the subject. Social VR is coming. Dolce, or are people just so spent at the end of the day they just want to have a passive little experience, and we're just totally delusional about believing that any type of active engagement in virtual worlds is worthwhile or going mainstream anytime soon? What do you think, Dolce?
I think that if we come up with better tool sets on how people can utilize these virtual worlds for their real lives and everyday lives, you'll definitely get more adoption.
The killer app, the use case.
Yeah, the use case. Exactly.
Why do I need it?
Yeah, why do I need it? And I believe that mixed reality is the key to that. Like AR incorporated with VR is the key into bridging people into a deeper experience.
But I like VR. Look, if I go, like Kelvin mentioned, historical experiences, if I go into historical, I know what you're saying. I'm sorry to cut you off, but sometimes I like to be completely inside this one experience, and the overlay stuff doesn't cut it for me. I think actually it's deeper if I'm completely in it.
Correct. And I'm not saying that to knock out the completely immersive. That's why it's got to be a mixed experience where you can go deeply immersive when you want, and then bring some of that immersive experience into the real life, and vice versa. Have some kind of notifications coming in from the real life into the virtual, so you can be tethered in.
That would be cool, actually, if I have my cell phone. Speaking of cell phones, Joe, I know you don't have one. So what's your final thought? Will Sansar and High Fidel and all the others go the way of Second Life, a comfortable niche that everybody else ignores?
I don't know. I think that what we're looking for is something with an extremely low threshold, which can be used for something like Facebook. For instance, I'm moving to a new house, and I was thinking the other day, of course, I already built a model in Second Life, but I was thinking I would like to show this house to my friends on Facebook and my family members, including my 93-year-old aunt in Australia. Oh, yeah. So I thought, imagine if I wanted to do that, it would have to be such a low threshold. It would have to be nothing more than just putting a headset on or, opening a window on your computer, and you'd be there. And one load. This could be something that happens in Sansar eventually. But, you have to share one link, click the link, and you're there. And you can walk around and you can see it, and you can chat with me, and I can say, hey, how are you doing? And look, this is my new house, things like that. Once that happens, we're going to get there. More and more people are going to buy headsets, and we can do things like that, but also watch one of those extremely boring sports games together with your friends, even though they're in other part of the country. Once we can do that, and it's easy and cheap, everyone's going to use it.
Then maybe it's got to be on the web.
Joe's hitting something, a real good point. I like what she's thinking. Yep.
I want to touch on things that both Dulce and Joe said. First, Joe's remark about sports. I'm not terribly interested in sports, but I do occasionally hang out with friends to watch sports. Aww. Because I'm interested in hanging out with the friends. The sports is just a side part of it. And things like that are going to be key, I think. And touching on Dulcie's point about the mixed reality thing, I wonder if it's low threshold, if it's not expensive, if you don't have to have a heavyweight HMD, and if it's mixed reality, is that going to be more compatible with people with the more cones in their eyes and they get sick easily, less likely in mixed reality and AR than they are in VR? Isn't that right. Likely true?
That's likely true, yeah.
I do think Sansar is making some critical mistakes, although they might be strategic right now. I'll get a thing in my Facebook feed about such and such a studio made this fantastic thing, and I go and read the whole article, and there isn't the URL to that experience anywhere in the article.
Yep.
Why?
Yep.
And then on top of that, you go to Sansar, and there's no search.
Search is coming. There's a couple things coming. Search is coming. Friends, social tools are coming.
But with search not there yet, why would you not give the URL to everything you're talking about right there in the article? They're missing the boat.
Absolutely. But I speak to that point real quick. I speak with Pete Linden every once in a while, the director of communications at Linden Lab, and he told me that sometimes the journalist simply forgets to put the URL, or whoever is, the last guy in charge, and it's pretty sad.
That's why you demand to have a last check.
Yeah.
It's generally known that I'm world famous, and I've been interviewed quite a lot, and I always
Yes, but it's a virtual world, so it doesn't count.
No. I'm real life famous. Don't tell anyone though. But I've been interviewed by Drax's favorite newspaper, the Daily Mail.
The Daily Mail, yes.
And, so I always demand to get a last check before they publish, because they always mess up. They always do.
I need to cut you guys off because we're out of time. I want to, Dulce, want to have the absolute last word about a real life thing that you've been very vocal on Facebook, which I think is so important. So I want to end with that. Before that, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Well, first of all, thank you guys, and this is a fantastic panel, and we gotta have this band back again as Sansar is moving hopefully forward. I'm really excited about it, and yeah, I wish them all the best. Come to Atlas Hopping Saturday, 11 a.m. and see for yourself. Also on October 14th, I will actually be in High Fidelity at a local Munich, Germany event where we're interviewing Philip Rosedale on stage in High Fidelity. So wish me good luck that they have a good internet connection, because again, this is one of the things where I'm going to be sweating 2 nights in a row before this event, because maybe stuff doesn't load and you're trying to show this wonderful technology, and then there is nothing.
May the megabits be with you.
Yes.
We're back on Sundays, as I said. Sunday around 12 p.m. Second Life time, the podcast goes live. Please consider subscribing. And when this thing runs, and Jo has decided to start a GoFundMe campaign, we'll link to it.
All right. You've twisted my rubber arm.
My last words, and I already see Loki Elliott probably typing this comment. But I think what we just talked about, the ease of use and stuff like that, it seems to me we're all talking about URLs, and I think what none of these new worlds are solving is that it still demands a download of a client. But we're out of time. This is a subject we could spend another hour on, how to solve that conundrum. Tony Parisi would say, well, the web should be the metaverse.
Yep.
I know Dulce wants to. Yeah,
Web VR.
Go ahead.
It's going to be
A-frame, Web VR.
Yeah, maybe, and iPhone clients. So Dulce, tell me what is really bugging you about real life right now. Puerto Rico is not getting enough attention.
The activation that's not happening in Puerto Rico, the apocalyptic, catastrophic event that happened in Puerto Rico that is not being addressed, that our president is being a racist pig about, and he's attacking my family, because the island is filled with my family, and calling them lazy and ungrateful. And they've been now 10 days without any real activation and aid going in there. I was in Andrew back in 1992, and the military was there the very next day. I don't understand why we can't send military down to help these people, and it's rather frustrating. But there are people in the community that are actively trying to help. They're making care packages with equipment to go into devastated areas, to go find people with drones and 360 cameras. They're also sending these devices into Mexico as well to go into the rubble. So the more support and help that we can get from the private sector in these places, I think is the best right now, because our government is not doing it.
Nothing makes me happier to be a former conservative.
There's nothing wrong with being a conservative, but this is not conservatism, right, Kelvin? I mean, this is anti-humanism, I guess.
Butt-headedness.
Well, the conservatives are generally on the side of decency and morals and all that sort of old-fashioned stuff. And all I have to say is Trump is not a gentleman.
Oh, that
should be enough not to make him a president, in my book, anyway.
Clown.
Well, on that note, we are enthusiastic about the virtual world, but that doesn't mean that we have our heads in the sand, and it means that we can do walk and chew gum at the same time. We can enjoy the virtual world and the creativity, but we can also care about our fellow human beings, and let's go out and do that. So thank you all for being on the show. That's it, Drax Files Radio Hour. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drax.
Auf Wiedersehen.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Jo Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Time Portal, SL Artist, Warbug, Bay City You Know for Kids, 01 Heavy Industries Corporation, Extraordinary, Ionic, Maven Homes, Giza Creations, Botanical, Strawberry Sing, Abranimations, Eros Avatars, Caravel Design, The Cube Republic, What Next, Landscapes Unlimited, Fallen Gods Incorporated, and Death Row Designs. Thumbnail by Justin Esparza. Contact the show via Skype, DraxFiles, Avatar DraxFiles, or email radio@draxfiles.com.